Oh, I couldn't even, oh, just about. Oh God. This is a mouse like you've never seen before. Forget your conventional wrist-breaking mice. Forget the ergonomic vertical mice as well. No, this is the ultimate in convenience and productivity. This is the RollerMouse Pro2. Now, I know what you're thinking. It sure as hell doesn't look like a mouse. I mean, it doesn't have a trackpad or even a trackball, so what gives? Well, you've probably seen a trackball mouse before, where your thumb rolls a ball around, much like the OG mice did before the optical and laser sensors came about, although in that case you're moving the mouse and then the desk surface is the one that rolls the ball, but it's functionally the same principle. Now, what would happen if you took that ball and then sort of squashed it into a cylinder instead? Well, then you would get what looks more like a bar, which coincidentally is exactly what we have here. This is the tracking device. It spins around itself for the vertical control and slides left and right for horizontal movement. But you might have noticed a problem. See, when you use a trackball mouse, if you want to move really far to the left or to the right, you can just keep spinning the ball until you're there. But a bar that slides? Well, now you've got finite limits on how far you can scroll side to side at a time. But luckily, the folks at Contour who actually designed this thing, well, they thought of that and added micro switches to the ends of each side, which when pressed, lock the cursor into a straight horizontal movement at a fixed speed while the switch is being pressed. Okay, so now you can move the mouse around, but what about all the buttons? Well, as you've probably already noticed, they're here. They're in a cutout section of the wrist rest. You've got your scroll wheel in the middle, as well as left and right click, but also two buttons in black just above, and a third button in the center below the scroll wheel. The top two buttons by default are copy and paste, although you can remap them to pretty much anything you like in their included software. But that middle button, well, that's double click. Yeah, like double left click, it'll press the left mouse button twice, letting you run programs, open folders, or select blocks of text with a single button press. It's great. Although, if you would rather that be, some other function, again, you can change that in their software too. Oh, and just in case you don't want to reach for that left click button, you can also just push down on the bar itself to left click, and again, you can change that in the software too. It keeps things nice and easy. And actually, speaking of keeping things easy, this is remarkably simple and has a remarkably short learning curve. My first impression of this, once I knew how it was meant to work, was that it looked painfully unintuitive. I thought that it would take weeks to get used to using it, much in the same way that many of the ergonomic keyboards with completely different typing paradigms can take ages to just get up to the same speed you are with a standard keyboard. But within literally a couple of minutes of me plugging this in and using it, I got it. I mean, it makes so much sense. Why take your hand off of your keyboard to move your cursor an inch when you'll just put it back on the keyboard to carry on typing? With this, you can scroll, click, and type all without barely moving your hand, which is fantastic. The technique for pinpoint accuracy does take some time to build and build that muscle memory. I've taken to using most of my fingers for now, especially because, at least for my thumbs and actually just in general, I have very shaky hands. I have arthritis in every joint in my body, which doesn't help. So I tend to use the sort of all of my fingers to keep it steady. But if you have steadier hands, then a single digit might just work fine. What it does mean though, is that my thumb is then free to use the scroll wheel button or the general left and right click buttons while my fingers move the cursor, all within 2 inches of where it rests when I'm typing. Now, I should make it clear that the main advantage of using this mouse is for the sort of person who is almost always typing and who only needs their mouse occasionally. I mean, it literally has legs on it so that your keyboard can rest on top and butt up against the top side, so it's clearly designed for that kind of use case. While it is perfectly possible to use this with more complicated mouse movements, as you'll see in a second, it's not perfect. Remember those micro switches at the end of the travel? Well, when they're engaged, they move the mouse or the cursor at a fixed speed. You can change what speed it works at in their software, but for very wide displays, multiple monitors, that sort of thing is pretty difficult to get used to as you go from being able to control the mouse at whatever speed and position you want to more of a reaction time game where you wait until it's in line with where you want to go and then release pressure. And actually, in practice, what you tend to do is deliberately overshoot your mark and then slide backwards so that as you slide it off, you then have a bit of wiggle room around that area rather than having to do that process again, and you're sort of centering the bar a little bit more. But again, that sort of process, if you have to do it a lot, can be tedious. An effect of this being a rather obviously used model is that those limit switches, and actually the press to click switch in the bar, is rather light and sort of non-tactile. It can often not register your presses as clicks, or give barely any to no kinesthetic feedback when enabling or disabling those limit switches. As for the wrist rest pieces, I think it's pretty clear these have seen better days, much in the same way that every other faux leather product that I've had, they are sort of just falling apart. But luckily, Contour isn't Apple, so you can actually disassemble this really easily and actually without any tools. There are just a few tabs on the bottom that hold both of these pads in, including the plastic surround if you want to replace that or paint it, whatever else. And when you unclip them, you can also unclip that plastic surround and get access to the edge where the faux leather is glued to the backing piece over some foam. Since this is one of their older models, the Pro 2 I think came out in something like 2010 or 2011, you can't buy the direct pad replacements for this one anymore, although it does look like the newer Pro 3 model shares, well, very similar pads, so you might be able to use those, but realistically, you can easily repair this yourself without too much fuss. Okay, enough talking, let's get to the answering the burning question. Can you game with it? Well, I honestly have no idea, so let's go find out. So cleverly or not, I jumped myself in the absolute deep end because I'm playing CSGO, and this is probably, you know, the hardest game that I could have picked to try and play on this. And let's just say it's not doing too well, although, I mean, luckily, since I almost always play with bots, one, because I'm just not very good, and two, because it means I have a bit more of a consistent, you know, experience playing, I'm actually getting them. And one of the nice things is that you can basically just leave it still, and as long as you're aiming at their head and they're not moving too much, it works. One of the difficulties is definitely that end travel. I might have to adjust that end travel speed because it's really slow compared to the, you know, standard travel that you can do side to side with the bar moving. Up and down's okay. I think the mouse is potentially just a little bit too sensitive, as any level of movement makes it sort of shake around, which then means you have a rather inaccurate experience. Although saying that, I am still just about getting them, which I don't know speaks to the bot's abilities or the fact that this mouse actually isn't too bad. No. Yeah, I definitely need to change that end travel speed. This is way too slow. Like, no. Oh, just about. Nope. There's also a limitation to how fast it will go side to side. There we go. Is he defusing the bomb? Oh no, he's behind me. No! I don't think he has enough time. It's fine. I think we won. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna change some settings and try again. Nope. Nah. It's still really difficult to get going. And you can't really pull down as well. Okay, that side to side a lot better. Oh dear. When it skips tracking, it's really jarring. Yeah, look at this. Oh no. Oh god, no. Oh. Yeah, so I would say that while you can just about play games in it, and I'm sure less mouse intensive games might do okay, I wouldn't necessarily be trading this in for a more conventional style mouse if gaming is your primary concern. Unsurprisingly, an ergonomic mouse designed for office use isn't the best for gaming. And if you were thinking of rocking this as a dual mouse setup, like many of us, including me, already do, there is an extra drawback here, which is that their software to change things like the cursor sensitivity and scroll settings just changes the Windows pointer settings, meaning that any changes you make to make your use of the roller bar, functional, will also affect your standard mouse movements. Sure, you might be able to find a middle ground setting where you can still use the roller mouse, effectively, but it's still fast enough to make use of your standard mouse. But for me, it's too much a wide gap where I need very low sensitivity on the roller mouse to not just have it wiggle around, but that's far too low sensitivity to use with a conventional mouse instead. And that's a massive shame, because especially for programming, I really like this. It's incredibly efficient, and it makes jumping to a different bit of code and then typing something out, moving, maybe grabbing something from one of the selection panels, or just changing something else and then coming back to the code window without ever having to lift my hand off of the keyboard is fantastic. It's so much more efficient, and for the right sort of workload, I can easily see why someone would pick one of these up and potentially replace their entire, replace their standard mouse with just this, again, for the right type of probably office workloads. Of course, as with any product that comes with a 10 mile radius of the word ergonomic, these aren't cheap. The newer version of this one, the RollerMouse Pro2, sells for around £150. And their newest line, the Red series, well, that starts at £250, and the fancier wireless models, well, they're more like £300. That is a lot to drop on such a weird peripheral, but again, for the right work, and once you've tried one, I honestly can't imagine that you would want to go back to a regular mouse instead. For me, I think this is a really interesting product, as it's definitely niche, but it sets out to solve a rather specific problem, and beyond a few little tweaks to make it just a little bit better, more sort of viable for me, I think it solves that problem rather well, and I think that's kind of unique to the sort of stuff that I'm normally reviewing, which is why it's so interesting to me. But with that said, I would love to hear what you think in the comments down below. Have you seen one of these before, tried one, have one, use one regularly? Feel free to let me know in the comments, especially if you have tried one or have one yourself. I would love to know what a more experienced user sort of thinks of it and your sort of workflow around it. If you do want to pick one up, of course, I can't really link to this exact one since this is about a decade old, but a link to the newer version, the Pro 3 and the Red series, both of those will be in the description down below if you check out, and those are Amazon affiliate links that will take you to your local Amazon store where you can see pricing when and where you watch this. If you do end up picking one up, by the way, I'd love to hear what you think of it in those comments as well. And if you want to see more videos like this from me doing kind of silly things with products that aren't designed to do things like gaming, or more standard tech reviews, then feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. You can also support the channel and support this madness with the YouTube join button, where you get access to our Money Men Discord chat, sponsor-free videos, and some cool emojis to use in the comments and on our weekly live streams, or you can support on Patreon instead if you'd rather. There's also a whole load of other links in the description for merch or hoodies or t-shirts like this one, or a load of other co-designs I made myself, or there's less direct ways like affiliate links to places like Overclocks UK if you're buying from there, Humble Bundle, Streamlabs OBS, and VPN options, and a whole load of other stuff, so feel free to take a look. And feel free to take a look at some more videos on the end cards, maybe some more standard mice reviews or anything else. Feel free to take a look. Otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next video.